Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. Today, I'm joined by a woman who has lived many lives and is a role model in all of them, Janine Firpo. Janine is a speaker, author, and social entrepreneur who has spent her career at the intersection of women, finance, and impact. She started in Silicon Valley at companies like Apple and HP, and then pivoted to international development with the World Bank and the Gates Foundation. In 2017, she left that world to focus entirely on values-aligned investing. She's the author of Activate Your Money and co-founder of the nonprofit Invest for Better, which helps women gain confidence and community around investing. In our conversation, we dive into how Janine realized her money was out of alignment with her mission and how she changed that. We talk about why she focuses her work on women, the transformative power of learning circles, and how shifting even small amounts of money can shift the world. We explore the deep relationship between values, action, and financial empowerment, especially for women who've been told they're not good with money. Welcome, Janine, to this episode of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm really excited to open up the conversation of money and social justice with you.
Thank you. I look forward to it too, and I'm really happy that we're talking more and working more together. So just happy to be here with you.
That's wonderful. And so just a little bit of context for listeners. Janine and I, we first met at FinCon, which is the content creation conference for financial educators. And we met specifically at a meetup that I was hosting on social justice and money.
Exactly. Yeah, which was great. So you did it the first year, and then we did it again the second year, and the audience for it grew. So I think we tripled. In the 2 years that I've been at FinCon, I think we had about 30 people who attended the social justice meetup the first time, which would have been in 2023. And then last year, we had 90 people who showed up.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And when we've had other conversations, we've talked about how FinCon can be sometimes a little slower to get onto the environmental justice, social justice train, because they're really focused on retiring early for the most part, right? So profit is really what motivates them. I'm really curious, when the second time, when there were 90 people in attendance, do you remember some of the themes that brought people to the meetup?
Well, I think more people are getting concerned about this and interested in issues around what's happening in the world, what's happening to business, how mercenary it's becoming. I think more people are concerned about fair wages. I think they're concerned about companies that are creating things that are harmful to people. And I think we want to see more accountability in these companies. So I think that's part of it. I do think that FinCon is really driven by, making as much money as you can as fast as you can. And I think that there's a false narrative around the fact that you cannot do that and also achieve better outcomes from a social responsibility and a social justice perspective. I think if you want to go all the way to the most extreme and try to do the most that you can in that area, you may be making decisions about giving up some financial return. But there are definitely ways that you can do things much, much, much better than the way they are currently being done and not have to give up financial return. And so I really hope that that group begins to understand that that's possible, so that more people can move their money in ways that are more meaningful and valuable and lead to a better outcome for all of us.
And we can, first, before we dive into exactly what it means to invest for better, I would love for you to share a little bit of context of like how you got into your current role and how your nonprofit that you co-founded started.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And I'll give you the short version because it's sort of a long story. But the nuts and bolts of it is that when I first started my career in 1981, I was in the high tech industry, I was in the computer industry. And that was before there were really personal computers to speak of. And I ended up working at Apple Computer in the 80s when we were talking about changing the world one computer at a time. And I've always been really interested in making a mark and using my life and my career to make a difference in the world. And in the mid 90s, I left the tech industry to start looking at the role that technology and business thinking could have on international poverty reduction. And so I created a second career of over 20 years in that space. And because of that work and because of the changes I made in my career, and I gave up salary and I gave up a lot of things when I shifted out of what was rapidly becoming the internet and the first dot-com bubble, I walked away from that to do work that I thought was more meaningful. I realized that my money was undermining me and that my money was actually invested in things that were probably helping to create the very challenges I was trying to solve with the work that I was doing in the world. And even though I was not a high net wealth individual, which is the only people who were doing this kind of investing that way, really, or institutional investors or foundations, I made a personal commitment to figure out a way to invest all of my money in alignment with my values, starting with my cash and going right through. And at the time, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as private investing or angel investing, or that somebody like me could even think about those kinds of things. So I was just looking at how do I shift my cash and my fixed income and my stock. And my financial advisors didn't help me get where I wanted to be. So I retired from my professional career. I retired from an income about 7 years ago now, and I started taking my money back and really working on this myself. And I realized a lot had changed, and that we had reached a point where there was enough product in the market that anyone, whether they were accredited or not, whether all they had was a bank account, could think about the impact that their money was having and could actually shift that money into things that were more aligned with their values and more aligned with creating the world that they wanted to see. And so I realized a lot of women and younger people wanted to do that, and nobody was helping them. There was a lot of misinformation. And so I decided to write a book, and I wrote Activate Your Money during COVID, actually. And it was published in 2021, and the subtitle is Invest to Grow Your Wealth and Build a Better World. And I talked about how to do that across all asset classes. And then while I was writing the book, I met another woman who was putting women into small groups to teach them how to invest their values. And she and I decided, our work is really complementary. Why don't we collaborate? And we ended up co-creating Invest for Better as a nonprofit in 2021 as well.
You moved incredibly fast, right? So in 7 years since you retired, you've written the book, you've created a nonprofit, and I love the model of Invest for Better, that it's small groups getting together over a few months. I know that the author of Atomic Habits, James Clear, writes that the fastest way, the easiest way to change habits is to join a group of people who are doing the thing that you want to do.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that. Yeah, well, I've been in investment clubs 3 times in my life, and I learned so much from them. And I really, when I was writing Invest for Better, I thought I'd love for this book to be used like in book clubs and women coming together. And so when I met Ellen Remmer, who's my co-founder, and she was already doing that, I was just delighted to move forward. And so the fact that we put women into small groups of 8 to 20, and we have facilitators who run them through a curriculum, and it's a big part of the curriculum is them talking to each other. It's them actually having a place where they can feel safe and where they can speak to each other about money and never have had that opportunity before. And I think part of what's transformative about it is they begin to realize that, I actually know more than I thought, and I can do this. I can do this. And not only do I have the ability to be a smart, confident investor, but I also can move money into the things that I care about. And so that community aspect of this and that support aspect of this is really what women speak about when they talk about Investor Better and what they like about this organization.
And what was behind your decision to make it a women only
Oh, that
group?
was easy. That was so easy. So when I was thinking about all of this, I have a tendency in my life, I just talk to people. When I have problems, I'm like, hey, hi, I don't know you, but this is my thing I'm working on right now. And it's been remarkable, some of the changes that have come in my life because of these random conversations that I have with people. So I was doing that. I was telling people that I was thinking about writing this book and what it was going to be about. And the women were like immediately with me. They were immediately with me. They got it immediately. I didn't have to do any kind of, I didn't have to say anything. They just totally understood. And the men, not all of them, but many of them would argue with me. Why I was wrong, why this wasn't right, why this yada, yada, yada. And I realized, I'm too old for this. I've been around this block too many times, and I don't need to fight with anybody. I don't need that. And I'm going to just focus on women because they get it. And I'm going to focus on them because they've been so underserved in this space before. In fact, in order to get my book published by Wiley or by any reputable publisher, I had to write a book proposal, and that book proposal is sort of like a business plan, right? And I had to put in a competitive analysis, what other books were out there in the market space. So I looked at over 100 titles in the personal finance space, and some of those titles were personal finance, and some of them were impact investing titles. The impact investing stuff was all targeted toward high net wealth individuals or professionals. It wasn't speaking to the average person. The personal finance stuff, particularly that stuff that maybe spoke to women, first of all, some of it was written by men. Some of the most popular personal finance books for women were written by men. And then if you looked at a 300-page book, they were telling us how to budget, how to save our money, how to get out of debt, how to have a will or, how to have insurance. Important stuff, valuable stuff. But only about 30 pages of a 300-page book was focused on investing. We just weren't being taught how to invest. And so I realized there was really a gap for women in that regard. And that, we were helping them get to a certain level of financial wellness. But then once they got to the point where they were actually making more money than they needed, they had their debt paid off, they were doing the budgeting thing, they were doing the saving thing, nobody was actually helping them think about how to grow wealth or invest in ways that were going to be helpful to them or help them really succeed and grow. So I decided that's what I was going to do. And women feel more comfortable talking to other women. You put one man in one of those circles, conversation is completely different. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer.
That makes a lot of sense. I remember talking with a friend of mine who is a personal finance professor at a really well-known personal finance master's program. And he was saying that there's been research done that when women are questioned, like when women fill out a questionnaire on what they know about finances, what they know about investing, they often will be able to explain a topic and still say that they don't know what that topic is. The lack of self-confidence. And I can imagine that being in a group with other people and hearing other women say like, oh, I know this. And then you hearing yourself, I also know that. It's got to be a lot more about changing your identity. Because at the end of the time, when it comes to finance, a lot of it is more about our behaviors than our knowledge.
Yeah, no, you're right. And to be clear, I want to be really clear. I'm not dissing men. I'm not saying men are bad. I'm married. I love men. I do. I love them. And the way that our society has been set up has made it difficult for women to be able to show up in their full selves. And what you just said, it's not only about finance, it's about everything, right? So we really underestimate our knowledge. We feel like we have to be absolute experts on a thing before we're willing to say we know something. And the truth is, none of us are ever total experts on anything. Really, none of us. Because
I'm
things
laughing,
change.
Janine, because you're like, I don't know if you have your CFA or Chartered Financial Analyst degree, but you've done such incredible research into everything that you suggest, everything that you advise.
Yeah, no, I'm not. And that's really important to understand too. I am not a finance professional at all. I've never. So, what I am is I'm somebody who started investing when I was in my 20s and bought my first house before I was 30. In fact, I still vividly remember the 30th birthday party that I threw for myself in my house. I vividly remember that. So I've been an investor for a very long time. And when I wrote Activate Your Money, I started out trying to write it myself and realized it was going to take me forever because just doing the cash chapter took me a month and a half of all the interviews and everything. It was like, and I realized this is going to be insane. It's by the time I finish this book, I'm going to have to start it all over again because everything I said in the beginning is going to be out of date. So I ended up reaching out to about 40 women I knew who were CFPs, CFAs, angel investors, venture investors. I mean, I have had the benefit of having a long career and a very interesting and diverse network. And so I reached out to my network and I had about 40 women help me write early versions of this book. They wrote different chapters where they had expertise. And then every chapter went through a review. About 20 to 25 women reviewed every single chapter, different women. About half of them were women who were experts on that chapter, and about half of them were women who I assumed would be readers. And then I rewrote the whole book based on their feedback. And so I really had a lot of help writing this book. About 150 women and some men helped me write it. And so I lean a lot on other people's brilliance to do what I do.
Yeah, and you've mentioned it a couple of times that you talk with everyone, and I remember that. I remember from our meetings, from the interactions that you've had, you're so curious and open and also full of ideas. So I just want to mirror back that what Invest for Better is, because how many participants have gone through the program?
We've had about 2,500 women go through the program so far. But what I'm really excited about, because while I'm proud of that, it's a drop in the bucket. I want millions of women to wake up to the power and the potential of their money, and we're never going to achieve that on our own. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about that we're doing right now is we have a program where we are recrafting the curriculum to speak specifically to Black women. And, you know, as I've been reminded, our money stories are all unique. The way we think about money is unique, but there are certain themes within Black society around money and trauma around money and other things that is important for, we think, Black women to be able to speak to and to speak to with each other. So we're upgrading our curriculum and crafting it that way. And we're going to have 9 women leading circles that will start in April of this year. And we've chosen women who are coaches, financial planners, women who are running their own little businesses. And what we've said to them is, if you like this, if you find value in this during this pilot, then you can take our curriculum, you can modify it, you can run it under your own brand, and you can start delivering it to as a income stream for you and your business. And so we're really looking at how do we take what we're doing and the knowledge that we have, and how can we help give it to other people so that they can also incorporate it into what they do. Because the more voices that we have talking about this to the greater number of audiences, then the better our reach would be. So that's really what motivates me, is finding creative, interesting ways to get more people speaking about these opportunities and the change that it can make in the world. Because we get the economy that we invest in.
Right. I love that. We get the economy that we invest in. It's reminding people that we have a say. Every little action that we take can make a difference. And it's also really important that, because I think sometimes when we look at problems that are really big, right? We look at racism, we look at environmental collapse, it can feel that it's so incredibly large that I can't do anything. Who cares if I bring my own bag to the grocery store? Who cares if I make sure to focus on hiring a person of color as a vendor? But it does make a difference. We can get onto a different trajectory that's more of an upward spiral as opposed to hoarding and trying to protect ourselves from others.
I totally agree. So I think there are two ways that it really matters. So one, it really matters the way you just mentioned, which is collectively. Collectively, never underestimate what we can achieve together. Never underestimate it. And I think we've seen so many examples of that in the past. I think part of the reason that we're in the sort of the climate that we're in today is because a lot of that stuff was successful at one level. And there are people who don't want to see those kinds of things succeed. So I think that that's part of it. But the other thing I think is personal, right? So if you feel in your heart and you believe that there's a problem with plastic, and that plastic bags are creating a problem, and it's probably better to shop with your own bag and take your own bag to the store, then when you go to the store and you get a plastic bag, you don't feel good. There's a little part of you that's like, But if you took your own bag in and you walk out with your own bags, you actually feel good. You feel better because you're actually behaving in alignment with that inner thing that you're feeling, right? So when we start doing things that actually are in integrity with who we are, it all works better. I mean, when I think about my own personal values, I don't know if anything outshines integrity for me. I just feel, for me, it's such an important value, and it's such an important thing for me to live in integrity in as many ways and places that I can. It makes me feel good.
And that's the immediate feedback, right? And the people, give me a profile of who are the perfect people to join Invest for Better as it currently is, and who you imagine them to be for the group that's focused on Black women.
So I think it's very similar in all cases. So we tend to get women who are 35 to 65, say, that's kind of our bubble. But we have younger women and we have older women. They are women who tend to be more professional, and that could be anything. It could be a firefighter, it could be a police officer, it could be a doctor, it could be a lawyer, it could be somebody who has generally a professional career of some sort or the other, and who has reached a point where they have already succeeded with some of the basic financials. So we're not working with the women who really need to just pay off their debt right now. That's not the right person for us. It's somebody who's already gotten there and who is sort of at the point where I was talking about earlier. It's somebody who has more income than they need and is either already investing or wanting to invest, and who wants to actually grow their wealth, and who is willing to do the work, because investing is work. I don't believe in this stuff that people say. It's like, just buy this one stock and then never look at your stuff again. It's like, no, I'm sorry. 5 steps to financial freedom? No. This is a marathon. And, if I look at my own investing career, when I started investing back in the 80s, I guess it was, there weren't really index funds the way they are now. They had already started, but they hadn't reached the kind of success that they have today. So when I started investing, I was investing in individual companies. And as my personal wealth grew, I started diversifying more, right? And started doing other things besides the stock market. So my guess is that for people who are starting out now, 30 years from now, particularly with all these AI tools and everything else is coming down the pike, investing 30 years from now is not going to look like investing today. There's no way. It's going to be a different world somehow. I just can't imagine it's going to be the same. So this is something that is really important to get to know, stay on top of, pay attention to, and sort of make a part of what you do in your life. It doesn't mean you have to check stuff every day. I check my investments quarterly. Some people only do it once a year. But it's important to pay attention to it. So we're wanting women who are actually interested in paying attention and doing the work. And then I think it's women who want to also take a stand and to do more, find more ways that they can actually influence the world than some of the limited ways that we've been told that we can. And it's also women who are ready to step into their power. I mean, the thing about this is I really think that financial freedom is the next step in women's empowerment. Having control of your money, knowing what is invested in, making those decisions yourself, not just handing it off to somebody else, having enough of a cushion that you can leave jobs if you want, leave a marriage if you want, go on that dream vacation you've been wanting to, all that stuff, buy your kids what you want your kids to have. All of that stuff comes when we have control over our own money. It's a huge part of our empowerment.
Yeah. So it's women who are, what you said, it's like beyond the financials, right? Beyond the day to day. They have their emergency fund already saved. They have like 3 to 6 months of cash because you said more income than they need. And I want to come back to that because sometimes people might hear more income than they need and be like, oh, that's not me, right? It's so automatic.
That's a great point. In fact, I'm probably going to get this statistic a little wrong because I haven't read it lately, but I think I read that women believe they need to be making they need to have an excess of $4,000 a month or something, close to $50,000 a year before they can become an investor. So the amount of money that we think we need to have in excess before we can really become an investor is ridiculous. It's way too big. And the thing is, you can never start too young. So one of the pieces of information I heard that I just love because I think it's such a powerful example is if a woman is 20 years old and she starts to invest $100 a month, we're talking $1,200 a year, right? That feels like nothing. Feels like nothing to some women, $100 a month. If she does that, and she does that for 10 years, and then she stops investing, by the time she's 65, 60, retirement age, or current retirement age, which I think is also something we need to stop thinking about, she will have more money than a woman who starts investing $100 a month at the age of 30 and who does that for 30 years, right? So it's really important to start young, and it's really important to even start small. You can start really small. Just be consistent. Just keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it.
I remember when I was in college, I actually, my mom's income was really low, so I had been paid. A lot of my school was paid for through California. At the time, California had great tuition assistance, and I had made a profit in my summer job. So I went to my bank at the time and I told them I wanted to open a Roth IRA because I had heard about Roth IRAs. It was one of the few people, right? Mm-hmm. And the bank actually told me that I was too young not to worry about it.
Wow.
And I believed him. It was a man at at one of the top banks in the country. And they're like, you're too young. Don't worry about it.
Wow. That's crazy.
And I think I didn't invest in my IRA for another 5 or 6 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think there's a lot of bad advice out there. It's like start young, be consistent, and you will be better off. And if you have the other thing that's really important, like if you've got a 401k or a retirement account at work and they actually match it, oh my God, do it. It's like free money. Do it, do it, do it, do it. I always max that stuff out, right? And one of the things that I wish that I had done younger is Roth. I wish I had done more Roth. I didn't understand the difference between a Roth and a traditional IRA. So more of my money is in a traditional IRA because I thought, oh, I'm saving on taxes, yay, And so, but when I take that money out, it's going to be taxed and the gains are going to be taxed. And granted, a Roth is post tax, so you don't put money into a Roth until it's already taxed. But when you're younger, it maybe isn't as bad because your tax bracket isn't necessarily that high. But that money will ride for decades. And when you take it out, you don't have to pay taxes on anything, not the gains even. So it's really powerful vehicle. And I wish I'd done more.
I know that for myself, when I have clients that are like looking at taking time off because of childcare or any kind of care, because women, we get to do the brunt of any kind of caregiving, or they're taking a sabbatical, they're switching careers. This is a great time to do a Roth conversion, right? Yeah. Taking money out of a traditional, paying taxes when you're at a low bracket.
Well, and that's another thing for people who want to invest this way or invest with their values and use those funds. I mean, one of the challenges that we all face is that most retirement funds most retirement accounts don't allow us to invest in ways that are more aligned with our values. They don't even offer those options. They offer a tiny number of options that we have to choose between. And then we leave a job and we still have that money sitting in whatever 401k account it was or whatever. We get our new one. We can roll those monies over into personal brokerage accounts, personal IRAs, personal Roths, personal, etc. We can even roll that money over into a self-directed IRA, which allows us to make private investments out of that money and do whatever we want with that money, as long as we don't break certain rules. It's really, really important that you don't break certain rules or you can get fined seriously. A lot of those rules have to do with self-serving. So, for example, you can't use your retirement money to buy a second home that you could then go and hang out in, or a vacation home. You can't do that. But outside of some very strict rules, you can do a lot more with a self-directed IRA than you can with a traditional account. But even if you choose to just stay in traditional accounts and you roll it over into your own brokerage account, you then can buy much more broadly across the stock market and so on. And so it's a great way to get some of your money out of kind of locked into things that don't align with your values into things that do.
I love that you brought in the fact that a lot of us really start investing through our employer, right? Especially like what I shared in my example that my bank told me I was too young. I was investing through my employer. There were only certain options that I had. And at the time, I mean, I wasn't working in finance. And I remember reading a couple of books as I was trying to decide what to do with my investment, because that's part of my personality. And then realizing that I had like 3 options.
That's true. That's true. But the great thing is when you move it out of that and you put it into a brokerage account where you can make those choices, you can make those choices without taking any tax hit because it's in your retirement account. So when you start thinking about this kind of investing, your retirement accounts are some of the best ones to start making those choices, at least your stock market choices, because there's no burden on you. Like I'm in a situation where I started investing, as I said, decades ago, literally. And I have some holdings that I've had for decades, literally. And there's capital gains in them, which is great on the one hand. I made money. But on the not so great hand, they're doing terrible things in the world. And for me to sell them is like a big deal. In fact, I have one stock. That I have the value of the stock, 95% of the value is gains. 95% because of how long I've held it. So what I'm doing with that one is I set up a DAF. So when I was writing Activate Your Money, I didn't even know that I didn't know there was such a thing as a DAF. I had no idea. I never heard about it before. And a DAF, for those who like me haven't heard, is something called a donor advised fund. And some people refer to it as a foundation for the rest of us, because what you can do is, so I think the way many of us do charity, and I used to do this too, is, I'd hear about a friend who was trying to run a marathon and they were raising money, so I'd give them money. Or I'd hear about a terrible thing that happened in the world and I'd feel bad, so I'd give money. Or somebody else that I knew would reach out to me for some reason and I'd give money. It was like this totally ad hoc thing. There was no strategy, no thought, no nothing behind it. Then I heard about donor advised funds, and what you can do with a donor advised fund is you can say, oh, any given year, I normally give away X amount of money. I mean, and for this to work, there are a couple of donor advised funds that take lower amounts, but for this to really work, you probably want to be giving $2,500 to $5,000 a year, at least that. And $25,000, I learned when I was writing my book, is about average for this country. That's people give away that kind of money. So when you put the money in the DAF, you just put it in and you get a total tax write-off for the amount that you put in the DAF when you put it in the DAF. So, and then you can give that money away as you want out of your DAF, or it can just sit there in your DAF. And what I started to do as a result of getting a DAF was I put together a strategic plan for my philanthropy. So I shifted from charity to philanthropy, like a philanthropist. Charity is just giving money away, sort of, however. A philanthropic plan, though, is I'm going to try to have this impact with my charitable giving. I'm going to give to these organizations. And one of the things that's really helpful to a nonprofit is to know that they're going to get a certain amount of money from you every year. It helps them plan. So I now have a series of organizations that I give to philanthropically every year. Same thing. It makes the whole thing easy. And it's also super easy for me now when somebody comes to me and says, oh, will you give to this thing? I say, you know what? I'm focusing on environment. I'm focusing on gender. These are the things I focus on through my philanthropy. And I've already made those choices. And what you're asking me doesn't fit within my philanthropic plan and strategy. And so it allows me, again, to be in integrity and to follow a certain dream or vision. And it gives me a very easy way, without feeling guilty, to say no to things that are outside of that plan or that strategy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking when you were mentioning that you had a stock that was highly appreciated, I was wondering, does she know about donor advice funds? But you do, and you know the language.
Yeah.
And that idea about having a strategy for what you want to do with your philanthropy, a lot of people sometimes also call it redistribution, right? Because sometimes when someone's especially in the immigrant community, if someone's a very high earner in their family and they're one of maybe 3 out of 60, there is a way that like the family sharing is a big part of it. And so just for people who might be saying, I don't have the means to be a philanthropist, there's probably other ways that you're sharing your assets, that you're sharing your income, that I also want people to give themselves credit for.
That's a really, really good point. And actually, when I had my international career, I worked across sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia and a number of parts of the world. And what you're describing is really common, right? It's really common for family, kin groups, or broader groups of people in a community to share resources, for one person to help others, for groups to stand up and bring their capital together and then lend it out to one person at a time so that they're all helping each other. I mean, this kind of stuff is really, really common. And interestingly enough, those kinds of help groups are generally women. Generally women.
Yeah, when you think of microcredit, they really focused on women's groups.
Yeah. You know why?
I imagine, I'm going to guess, women tend to be more focused on caregiving. They're not going to spend it on themselves because of the caregiving responsibilities.
That's very true. It is what they do. But the reason microfinance shifted to doing a lot for women is because they paid the money back. So
That makes a lot of sense.
they were good at repaying. I mean, microfinance loans get repaid at a very high rate. And when women get the extra money, the very first thing they do is they feed their kids better.
Mm-hmm.
And then when their kids are fed, they put them in school. So you're right. It is about that caring community. It's about how do I use this money to advance my children and our lives and our and our broader community. Very important. And I actually think women here are the same. You know, it's what we do with money too.
Yeah, to mention something that you opened our conversation with, that most of the people who were excited about this project were women. In my industry, as a financial advisor who focuses on impact investing, that's our bread and butter. Like 95% of our clients are women. Also, the founder of the company, or the founder of Strategy Squad, is also a woman. I'm a woman. Our clients, like, we attract women. We're all women. But overall, I know that even for my male colleagues, they have a higher proportion of women who are interested in impact investing. And for myself, one of the things that we haven't really mentioned is that I really focus on people who are highly sensitive. Part of being highly sensitive is that we can be very porous in our boundaries, meaning very empathic, right? Seeing someone else struggle is a struggle for me. So the idea of I win, they lose is actually lose-lose. How can I do well? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's true. For a lot of women, I think we're really, really collaborative. I mean, I think there's not all, so nothing, any generalized statement does not include everyone, but I think there is a desire to uplift and support other people. And I think that there's a recognition that we don't have to do it all ourselves and that we're actually stronger together. It's interesting because in one of my last jobs that had a lot of men in it and a lot of male thinking in it, I tried to bring our team into a more collaborative space, and I realized they didn't even know what it meant. They didn't even know what it meant. Like one guy, his thought was, well, you know, I came out of academia, and collaborating is when you're writing a paper and at a certain point you give it to your colleagues so that they can read it and give you feedback. That's what he thought collaboration was. And I was like, collaboration is when you sit down with somebody else and you co-create that paper. You don't write it yourself. It's like what I did with my book. That's collaboration, right? So I realize that some people, there's a way that I think about this and a way that many women that I know think about it that is not even understood by other people sometimes. So, yeah, I think women are we're different. We're different. We have our strengths. We have our weaknesses. There are ways that men too, right? And really, the world I look forward to is the world when it's okay for men to show their feminine side, for women to show their masculine side, when we are all equally, when we're all respected equally, when we're all allowed to show up in spaces equally, when there aren't barriers and biases there. And I would say this about race too, because the world that I want to see is one in which we truly are all equally able to self-realize into whatever that is that we are meant to be and the reason that we were put here on this planet. We are at our best when we can really self-actualize and really be the very best person that we were ever meant to be. And that's the world I want to see.
That's beautiful. And there was something that you said at the beginning that I don't know if you want to go into, if it feels like you have a full thought around it. You said that this backlash is because things were successful. If you could expand on that.
Possibly that. I mean, I think there's so many factors in where we are right now. I don't think there's a simple answer or a simple explanation or a simple thing that you can point to. I'm thinking also in part around the success of the kind of investing we're talking about. It has been successful, you know. Shareholder activism has worked to shift companies. A lot of money has moved in support of this. I think at a global level, it's like 25% or something in that range. In the United States, it's less, but is still not insignificant. And some of what happened there caused a concern among certain factions that, oh my God, people are actually moving their money in ways that are antithetical to our beliefs. And we need that to stop. And we need that to stop through whatever means or methods we can make to stop it. And I think that you could possibly make similar cases for some of the other things that happened, both in terms of gender as well as racial issues that came to the fore, and some of people's reaction to those things.
Because have you received criticism, or has Invest for Better received criticism for focusing on women? I know that you mentioned earlier a group that you're going to be focusing now on Black women. I just wonder how you move with that. And I'm happy to share also what I do.
I think it's important to continue to do the things that we believe in and to move forward with creating the kind of world we want to see. I think it's really important to keep moving forward because the alternative, for me at least, it's not an option. And within that, I think one needs to be thoughtful and inclusive. And so I think it's important to recognize that even though we work primarily with women, we have men who are supporters. We talk to men, we work with men, we like men too. So I think it's important to be inclusive. And I think it's important for us to also think about, including people of all political spectrums as well. And the good news is I do think that the stuff we're doing matters to people across the aisle. I mean, I think, and I've seen data to this effect, people want individuals to be paid a fair wage. They want that. It doesn't matter what state you live in or it doesn't matter. People want folks to be paid a fair wage. People want to know that corporations are run ethically. People want that. People do not want products and services that are going to harm them or harm their kids. They don't want to be eating carcinogens. They don't want that stuff put into their rivers, right? I actually even think that people truly do want equal opportunity for everyone. And that anyone should be able to get a job. Anyone should be able to go to college. Anyone should be able to do the things that they want to do. I think that people do believe in that. So I think that there's a way to continue to work on the things we care about, continue to move those things forward, and bring more people into the tent.
Yeah, and this feels like a lot of backlash. And I think what you're saying too about making sure that we're inclusive across all lines, I think that we do share most things, like on a broader spectrum, what you're saying about, when I think about healthcare, when I think about access to education, that's across racial lines, that's across gender lines, that's across immigration status. I recently learned about Reverend William Barber, who's continuing Reverend Martin Luther King's work with the Poor People's Campaign, because towards the end of his life, Dr. Martin Luther King was focusing on class issues more than on race issues, because having political say without economic say, going back to not owning your power financially, not being financially free, it's not that it's meaningless, but it can only take you so far.
Yeah. When I started working in Africa in the mid 90s, so we're talking 30 years ago, the poverty that I saw there was unconscionable, really bad. And, we kind of described those countries, the economic distribution in those countries was like a triangle. You had this tiny group of people at the top who had a lot of money, and you had a vast amount of them at the bottom who didn't. And I actually think a triangle is not a great visual because it assumes there's a lot in the middle that kind of are in the middle. I think it's more like a barbell where you have this circle on the top that's small, a very thin, like, tube, and then this big circle on the bottom, right? And this is how we thought of those economies, and that wasn't what we wanted to be in. I was born in the 1950s. I grew up in my formative years in an economy that felt like a diamond. There were rich people for sure, but there was this great middle class, and there were some poor people on the bottom. If you look at the dynamic now, and I recently posted, this is it's an old video, but on LinkedIn, I recently posted a video that was brilliant in showing the distribution of wealth in this country over time. And what they did in this video was they first asked Americans, what do you think the distribution of wealth is in this country? Draw this picture of what you think it looks like. What do you think it should look like? And then it compared that to what is. And the truth of that graph, what it showed is we went from a time when there weren't so many people that were on the backside of the poverty line to a point where there are. And the slope of the line for a vast majority, for a vast number of Americans is very, very small. It's close to a poverty level. And then you start to see it tick up. And we're at a point where the wealthy among us are so rich that not only could they not fit on the graph, they had to create 5 or 6 columns just for that wealth to even fit on the graph, to fit on the, so the level of disparity between the wealthiest among us and most of us right now in this country is so extreme. It's so extreme. And that's part of what's causing the challenge that we're in is there are a lot of people who don't even know where they'll get like $500 or $600 in an emergency. Like half of us. A lot of people. So things here have really shifted since, in my own lifetime. They have really, really shifted, and I worry about us. I worry about us.
Definitely. And I think going back to it, the shift that was happening in Martin Luther King's own life around focusing more on economic power, that's really where we still need to pick up the mantle and continue to work on this, which again, with your program, with Invest for Better, when people go through this program, and I don't think that there's a competition between working with an advisor and learning this language.
No, God, no.
And the people who want to do it on their own, I'm more than happy for them to go and learn and become experts and share this knowledge, this confidence with others. But also I know as someone who works with people on these things that when my clients come in and they're better informed, there's a bigger level of sense of calm that they have because they understand the language that I'm saying. Yes. They understand the plans that we're creating together. We're actually able to co-create.
Yes.
Because they're well informed.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. I don't think it's wise to put all of your eggs in a financial advisor basket. It's not. I mean, you need to understand this stuff too. You need to know whether you're getting whether you're asking the right questions and whether you really feel confident in that person. And, it's important to understand the lingo. It's important to have done some of it on your own at some point, I think. It's helpful. And then having an advisor is great. I mean, advisors can also be thought partners for you on this journey, right? So I actually have two advisors. And I do some of my money myself. I have my DIY. And the reason is that at one point I realized I wanted more control over my bond portfolio. And the only things that I was finding, the financial advisor who I had at the time had put me into this fund. And I was like, okay, I got more money. I want to put more money. I want to shift some out of equity and I want to put more into fixed income. What do we do with it? And she said, well, let's just put more in what you've already got. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to put it all in the same thing. What else you got? And she didn't have anything else for me. And I was like, okay, then. So not only did she end being my financial advisor because I was tired of getting those kinds of answers and then having to do the work myself, but I found somebody who said, I will take your bond portfolio, I'll get it out of the fund that it's in, and I will actually buy individual stocks, individual bonds for you and manage a bond portfolio of just your money. I was like, okay, I like that idea. So that's what she does. And so now I have a bond portfolio with one financial advisor and I have other assets with another financial advisor. And then some of the stuff that's super easy, that never shifts, it's like, I'm just going to manage that stuff myself. So I think there are ways that you can be creative around this. And I love my financial advisors. I wouldn't want to do all of this myself at this point. No way. So I think yes and yes. Know this stuff on your own to some degree. And yes, if you're at that point where you need or want a financial advisor, then absolutely, that's a valuable resource too.
Yeah, even at the firm where I work, we're very collaborative. I understand our models. I understand our portfolios are created by the larger holding Natural Investments that has a whole committee of people. We review these quarterly. It's very, because there's so much information that having one person know everything, you're setting yourself up for missing a lot of opportunities and a lot of threats.
Yeah, I think that's true too.
Well, and as we wrap up, there was a comment that you made earlier. You shared so much, Janine, that I just had to write down and be like, let me go back. Let me make sure that we actually open up this comment. You talked about retirement age.
Oh, yes. So again, I mean, I'm speaking to my age here, but the whole time I was growing up, it's like you retire at 60, 65, right? You work your whole life and then you're 65 and you can quit and then your life begins. You can do the thing you want to do. I never really bought into that, but what I really have come to realize is, so I'm 68. I'm past that retirement age. I have retired from an income. But I work really hard. I work long days. I work as hard as I ever worked when I was getting a salary. And I can't imagine not doing this. I have a lot of energy. In fact, I'm hoping that I will live to be 100. I have relatives that have lived that long, and they have lived that long with pretty good mental acuity and pretty good physical capabilities as well, right? So when I retired at the age of 60-ish, 60, 61, and I thought about it, I'm like, okay, let's say that I'm high energy until I'm 85 at least. That's another career. I got a whole nother career in me. What am I going to do? We're all going to live so much longer, and particularly people that are younger. You're not going to die, knock on wood, when you're 70 or even 80. You could still be vital and mentally competent until you're 90 or more. So what is this conversation about retiring? What does it really mean? When will it happen for many of us. And how can we think about creating lives where we are vital and contributing to society for as long as we are absolutely able? Why wouldn't we do that? I mean, I can't personally imagine anything else. You know, the pleasure stuff, it wears thin when that's all you do. It wears
Yes.
really thin, really fast.
We need
So-
meaning. We need meaning. And those of us, I would call you a high achiever, right? You're a high achiever. There's a lot you want to do. There's a lot of need that you see in the world. And being an integrity for you looks a certain way. And I really applaud that and admire that.
That's very true. And I realize that who I am and it's not for everyone, but I do think that this whole concept of retirement is going to need a rethink, particularly for those of us who are younger. And who will live longer, and for whom the whole money-making machine is going to be different too.
And going back to where we met at FinCon, which is very focused on retiring early. As a millennial, one of the things that I've also heard and that I've also helped clients with is creating a life that you don't want to retire from, right?
Exactly. In fact, at the last FinCon, I realized, oh my God, I've been FIRE my whole life. I just never realized it. And for those of you who don't know what FIRE means, it stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. And part of the precepts of it are to save, to live below your means, to make sure that you have money that you can invest and that you're investing consistently, because the goal is to get to a point where you have passive income, enough passive income from your investments to be able to stop doing the work you don't want to do and start doing the work you do want to do. And I realized I did that my whole career. I was never, ever in a job I didn't want to be in. Never. And I could do it because on the one hand, I didn't just have 3 to 6 months saved. I had a year. And the reason I had a year was because I read somewhere, and this may or may not still be true, but I read somewhere that it takes 1 month, when you're looking for a new job, it could take 1 month for every year of experience you have. So once you hit like a 10-year point, it could take you a year to find another job that you really want. So I was like, okay, then I'm going to have that much money sitting aside. So if I want to leave a job, or if I'm not feeling fulfilled, or I want to go travel, or whatever it is I want to do, I've got the money to do it. And so that was a really powerful thing for me, to be able to live the life I wanted and to always be in jobs I wanted to be in.
We're going to start to wrap up. I'll make sure to include in the show notes links to Invest for Better. I'm going to include the link from that video you posted on LinkedIn on the resources and the distribution of wealth. Is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners before we finish?
No, I think we had a pretty wide-ranging conversation. So I really thank you for it. And I enjoyed talking to you. I always do.
Thank you so much, Janine. Thank you for joining us for this conversation with Janine Firpo. Ever since we met almost 2 years ago, I've been impressed by your energy and vision. Whether you're just beginning your investment journey or looking to better align your existing portfolio with your values, I hope this episode has sparked new ideas about the power of your financial choices. Remember what Janine shared. It's never too early or too small to start investing, and you don't have to sacrifice returns to make an impact. Those small circles of support can transform not just how we invest, but how we see ourselves as financial actors in the world. If you're inspired to learn more, check out Janine's book, Activate Your Money, or visit investforbetter.org to discover how you can join a community of women taking control of their financial futures. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.